And I kind of turn over and I scream like, "Shut up," or "Stop talking." Obviously, I trying to catch my breath here telling this story, but like it freaked me out. It certainly freaked them out, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Holy cow! What was that?" Like I'm in Pacific Beach in San Diego, and I had just completely lost my frame of reference, and I was frustrated with the vehicle occupants for not scanning for IEDs, and I yelled at them for not paying attention, and it was like a huge slap in the face. So that's like 15 minutes into my return. Like it was not a slow. Like I knew right away, like immediately, there was a problem. And I wrote about this because I wanted to be honest with this, with the people that are paying attention to it. Um, I did not have to wrestle with whether or not I had a problem. It was just front and center. And so the only good that came from that was the absolute slap in the face of like, hey, dude, you got to deal with this. This is not a small thing. This is not going to go away. 16, 15,000. I had to work really hard to compartmentalize those as they were happening, but in reality, I was really just kind of tightening down on them. I talk a little bit about this too, and we could talk to it if you want, or we could skip it, either one. But I brought a lot of that home with me, and spent a lot of the time after that deployment dealing with it, because at the time you really had to compartmentalize. You had to focus on what you're doing. It was really not good to be distracted, and I was busy, man. Like that was a busy, busy, busy deployment. I did not have a lot of downtime. I did not have a lot of decompression time, and for the moment, that was a good thing.
I would like to uh, unpack that a little bit if you're
Yeah,
willing, because
sure.
again, I can appreciate
It's all
this
in black
is
and white at this point, man. I got no secrets, so you can ask me anything
yeah.
you
We got
want.
to get your book out. So I mean, but the piece here, right, is like I think I can appreciate. And this is just like just scratching the surface, right? Deploying, everything is tan flight suits, everything, right? When you come
Yeah.
back and it's green flight suits, it's green trees, like it's a sensory overload, right? And like that's just flight suits and trees, right? And it's
That's so
not
good.
involving any of the stuff of this high intensity combat, engage, getting shot at, shooting back. Like like I would imagine it's just a constant level of high stress that never dips below a certain level. Like you're always kind of on edge or never can be fully at ease, which that fatigue over the period of 6 months, I imagine again, just has to be like draining. So you come back, right? Like, all right, how do you work back into being a normal human being? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, and listen, I don't mind you asking at all. I'm happy to address this. I think this the irony in all this, man, is that I grew up so my whole life. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Like my whole life was I just wanted to fly jets, and I got to fly these incredible airplanes, and I've had this remarkably lucky career, and flew all the airplanes and all the things we talked to. By far, the most impactful year of my life was my year as a FAC. It's undeniable. It's not even close. Just based on all the things that happened there and all the impact it had on my life after. And a lot of it was like we just talked about, the leadership I learned and how to get through these challenging times. And I had a team of young Marines. I was part of a team, and I was the leader of that team, and I had a lot of young guys going through all the same things that we went through. The hardest thing that I ever had to endure is a member of my team was killed. Chris Leon was killed by a sniper in June 20th, 2006, and died. And to not bring home all of your Marines was a heavy burden for me. It was tough to lose a Marine right in the middle of that deployment. Had to continue to fight beyond his death for the rest of the time there. All those things weighed on me, weighed extremely heavily, and those are things that I certainly defined my career much more so than things I did in an airplane. But when you get back from that, I think what I came to recognize was I came back with the burden. I came back with the burden of not bringing home all my men, and I came back with the burden of realizing I had done what you just described, which is just kind of compartmentalizing, focusing on the task at hand, focusing on the mission, being hyper focused on getting us through that. And then when I came home, I don't think I had a very good sense of how much I was hanging on to until I got home. And the first alert to me that I came home and had some work to do was the drive home from the airport. When I flew home from my deployment, I landed in San Diego, and probably the best thing that came out of that deployment, when I took the orders to go on this fact tour, it gave me orders to San Diego, back to Miramar, back to Hornet Squadron. So my wife, who I just gotten married to. I got married in May. I deployed in September. We had just gotten married. She had spent my entire Iraq deployment in San Diego, where I knew I was going to get stationed. So when I left Iraq, I come back home to San Diego, and the drive from the airport where I land to our house is probably an 18-minute drive to get from downtown San Diego to Pacific Beach. On that drive home, as I'm driving home in like a Jeep Grand Cherokee, by the time we get to the side streets of where my neighborhood is, my wife and I were in the car. My mom was with us too, and they were talking. And I, at some point, kind of like lost orientation of what I was, and I screamed at them for not looking around, and I screamed at them for talking too much and not paying attention to what was going on. And I kind of turned over and I screamed like, "Shut up!" or "Stop talking." And I'm obviously I trying to catch my breath here telling this story, but like it freaked me out. It certainly freaked them out, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Holy cow! What was that?" Like I'm in Pacific Beach in San Diego, and I just completely lost my frame of reference, and I was frustrated with the vehicle occupants for not scanning for IEDs, and I yelled at them for not paying attention, and it was like a huge slap in the face. So that's like 15 minutes into my return. The
Yeah.
first night we go to, I wake up, the first night in my own bed in however long it had been with my wife. And I wake up with this pretty crazy nightmare about a grenade blowing up. And I wake up, my heart's racing, I'm in a cold sweat. I'm freaking out. My wife is staring at me. And so within the first 12 hours of me being home, I'm like, hey, there's a problem here. Like it was not a slow, like I knew right away, like immediately there was a problem. And I wrote about this because I wanted to be honest with this, with the people that are paying attention to it. Um, I did not have to wrestle with whether or not I had a problem. It was just front and center. And so the only good that came from that was the absolute slap in the face of like, hey, dude, you got to deal with this. This is not a small thing. This is not going to go away.
But that time period I can appreciate. I mean, it's much more talked about now. Like we're talking about it now. I venture to say if we backed this up 20 years ago, most guys would not talk about this. It'd be kind of bottled up, and you would
Yeah.
just deal with it on your own because there's a stigma associated with it, and especially being a pilot, there's a lot that comes with the mental health piece, and getting into a jet, and like whether you can do
Yeah.
that again or not. So
Yeah.
I guess how did you unpack that and deal with it? And again, I appreciate the fact that like that's a pretty challenging time period because maybe just again, if we backed up like post traumatic stress disorder, post traumatic stress, like I think that was just kind of starting being talked about more and more in that time frame.
Well, certainly it wasn't anything I wanted to talk about. I can tell you that for
Yeah,
sure, right? Like, and so my initial reaction was this constant wrestling of the honesty in my own head of like, hey, dude, that's not normal behavior, which clearly, Rain, it's not normal behavior.
right.
The acknowledgement that my wife knew it was not normal behavior, but I was so happy to be home. I was so happy to be alive. I was so elated to be with her that I think I certainly tried to shrug it off. And I think it was an interesting combination because, like I said, my wife and I had just gotten married. Um, Not to go into too much detail, but we dated and got engaged while I was at Top Gun. And Top Gun's like a full time job. She lived up in Lake Tahoe. I lived down in Fallon, so I really only saw her on weekends for the most part. So my point to that is like we had never really had a full fledged life together. We were just starting living together. So it was kind of the beginning of all this. She met me when I was like, Dave Dirk, the Corvette driving Top Gun instructor, like Hollywood guy. And next thing you know, like this is what she's getting is like this is a different person almost. And I think both of us tried to ignore it. I certainly wanted to just, hey, this will come and go. Well, it didn't. It didn't just dissipate on its own. And what had started to happen was it started to affect our marriage in the sense that like, so you mentioned PTSD, and listen, I have to say this, like, listen, man, what I went through was nothing compared to what other people go through. Like, I don't want to make it sound like my story was some people have endured so much harder and so much more difficult things. It was just what happened to me. It was unique to me, but by no means do I want people thinking like I endured. People have gone through so much worse and so much more challenging things. This is just my story and how it affected me. I What happened from that was I had a really short fuse, like a really, really short fuse, like very quick to get angry, like, a loud noise, somebody say something that caught me off guard. I was very kind of skittish. Like if little things that like wouldn't catch other people's attention, like picture like the little bubble wrap popping, that would I'd have massive reaction to that. And then nightmares. So you kind of look at it like kind of textbook type stuff. Um, I had all these very clear symptoms like, hey, this is what this is, man. You came home from Iraq, you got some post traumatic stress, and it's revealing itself. And what I kind of did to react to that was I tried to create a setting, and I didn't really do it on purpose, but I know this is what I was doing was like, I kind of mandated how people would treat me. So like, if I didn't want you talking because it bothered me, I'd be like, hey, no talking. Like kind of creating a setting where I was in control of how everybody else around it reacted. So if I got to the point that I thought you were talking too much, I try to shut you up. Um, it's like everything had to be biased in my favor. And it was subtle. It wasn't quite so deliberate as you can't talk, but I'd give like a facial expression or a hand gesture, or I'd kind of, walk out of the room like I'm done with this. And I created this massive disparity between me and my wife, which was nothing like our marriage or relationship was before. We were totally equals. She was very different from me, but like there was no elevation of status. But I came home with this frustration, and my response to that was like I had to control the environment so I wasn't overreacting to things that were bothering me, and that was like putting people in their place. Which, as you can hear me saying, it's like it's terrible. It's terrible. And what I came to realize was like I was doing all the talking and my wife was doing all the listening. And what's interesting about that is that in her from her perspective, she was just trying to be helpful to me. Like, it's my husband, I love him, like I hurt for him and whatever he needs. And so she kind of diminished herself and like subordinated herself to me, which seemed like in the short term, like what was good for me because I could manage the environment better. But dude, that is not a recipe for a marriage. A marriage is two equal human beings that care about each other and don't subordinate one to the other. Don't push your people
Right.
down. And dude, I was in 6 months from getting home, like it was at a breaking point. It happened. It was, and I think that's relatively quick. It was by the spring of next year. Like this is not going to work. It was
I
rough, man.
clearly know nothing about this. Not a psychologist. I'm curious. Is like is that a control thing to control the environment, like a survival instinct, right? Like, hey, if I'm controlling all this and how the pieces are moving. I mean, it is all in an effort to survive. And you're
Yeah.
operating in that environment. It is interesting.
And I don't have the psychology background, and I
Yeah.
hope I'm not describing in a way that diminishes other people's other experiences. But things like if I didn't want to go out somewhere, I'm like, we're not going. Like the town have like a fair or something like that. I'm like, I'm not going because I didn't want to be around other people. So like I was kind of the dictating all the things that we did. And all the while, I thought that was going to be the path to like be learning to deal with this stuff and having, it get better. But it wasn't having that effect. It was actually making things worse. And I know this sounds kind of silly. And again, I talk about this because, this has just kind of happened. I got to a point where I was able to look around and realize, like, first of all, this wasn't the marriage that I wanted. It wasn't the relationship that I used to have. I'm not happy. She's not happy. And if I just thought about it for a second, I just kind of thought about what was going on. If I got outside my own head, it was very clear what was happening. Is I was creating this environment. I was creating this environment for somewhat self-preservation, but I was imposing this on everybody else around me. And if I could see it outside of my own eyes, it was like, oh, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? And what I just came to realize was like, what I needed to do was talk a lot less, stop telling everybody else and stop dictating and stop determining. And I needed to kind of flip the script. And what I concluded in my head was I'd look back on my life and what had happened to get me to this point is like the one dictating who should be doing what. And I looked at my career and I thought, you know what? As a single seat fighter pilot, who's in charge of making decisions? Who's in charge of talking? Me. An instructor at Top Gun, teaching the courses, giving the debriefs. You know who's doing most of the talking? Me. Forward air controller in the vehicle, coordinator of the aircraft. You know who's doing all the talking and the decision making? Me. And I look back and I had built this habit. That stuff was out of necessity, but from a relationship standpoint, it's all wrong. It's all
Yeah.
wrong. And what I discovered was I had just lost the ability to listen to other people, specifically my wife. And I know how simple that sounds, but I'm telling you, it was that simple. It was that simple. And I just stopped talking so much and I just started inviting her to be herself and just started listening to her more. And Rain, dude, it wasn't quite like an overnight light switch, but dude, it was
Yeah.
fast. It was fast. And it made things, I just stopped talking and I just started listening to include like listening to my own brain. Like those nightmares, I'd wake
Yeah.
up and I'd feel like the reason I was having these nightmares, like something was bothering me. And then I was like ignoring that thing was I'm like, don't ignore, just listen. What's going on? Like, oh, I'm frustrated at this or whatever it might have been, some work thing or some, and I just stopped talking so much. I started listening more and it changed everything, man.